second. All in favor? Motion passes. Financial report.
The financial report is in your packet. It is March, it's the March 2022 report, which as you know, that's 75 or 3/4 way through our fiscal year, so you can use 75% under those budget numbers as a benchmark. And just point out under the revenues, 7 of our line items under revenue you can see are over 95%, if not over 100%, as far as in percentage for our revenue items. And we're at 81% after 9 months in the fiscal year in our revenue collection. And if you can go down through the expense categories on the next page, you can see we're right at 72% in our expenses. So we're a tad bit under the benchmark of 75%, and we're obviously over a little bit on revenue collection. But I'll be glad to answer any questions on the finance report that's in your packet.
Workers' compensation.
It went up. It's at 162%. You can see we got another bill, the 873. I think the Budget Committee talked about this. We had a workers' comp audit, and our budget amount was $1,145. $1,145. It's projected to be about $1,900. They did a random audit and raised our workers' comp rates $873. So when we got the audit, interesting enough, when we got the audit, it was set up for next fiscal year, but they made it retroactive. So they sent us another bill for this year. And we pay the bills in February for next year, so they made it retroactive. So that's the workers' comp. We're through the KEMI, the Kentucky, we're tied into the state workers' comp pool. And it runs through our agent, Johnson Pullman's our registered agent, but we go through KEMI is who we pay into the Kentucky system. It's in the next budget, but we got tagged into this budget year too. And it's now in this one because they sent us another bill. The letter we got said it was for fiscal year 23, but then they also then made the decision to make it retroactive to fiscal year 22. So
Okay.
we got a bill.
Notes or questions on financial statement? What will we approve? We have a motion approved. We have a second. Any discussion? All in favor? Motion passed. Construction sureties.
Yeah, you've got the chart, as you know, in your packet every month. We put the summary chart, but we've got 2 actual specific items here that we need to take action on. The first one is Judy Sharp Construction. This is Hunt Farm Section 5. The letter of credit that we're holding is, it's on the chart there, it's approximately $91,000. Let's see here, $91,179. Most of that work is, if not all that work is done in Section 5 except for the sidewalk construction. So we're reducing that letter of credit in the amount of $62,948 to a reduced amount of $28,231 to be held for sidewalk construction. And we'll have to vote on these separate if you guys see fit. So again, Section 5, all the work's done, the street, curb, gutter, all that's left is the sidewalk, so we're reducing letter of credit by all the construction amount except for sidewalks.
I make a motion, we accept then.
We have a motion to accept. I heard a second. Okay, second.
second item is also Jody Sharp Construction Company. This is Hunt Farm Section 4. We were holding a surety, a cash surety of $7,012.50 for the remaining sidewalk portions. That's, all the sidewalks are in. There's a couple gaps out there, but those are for driveway aprons for one lot. And so the sidewalks are complete in that section. That's Section 4. And this would be releasing the remaining cash surety for that amount to Mr. Sharp.
I'll make a motion to release that money.
We have a motion. And a second. All in favor? Motion passes. Subdivision approval. Are you going to do that, Steve?
I am. Turn this on. All right, the first, let me get my plats here. Let me get my agenda out. Well, the first plat is Bud Farm Llc. It's applied for subdivision. This involves several sections or small pieces of the sanctuary subdivision. And the aerial's up behind you guys, and you have the plat. This is a minor plat. As you know, this subdivision's already, some of the lots are developed, the streets are in. And what this plat is doing is revising Lot 2 and pulling some of this common open space into Lot 2. It's relocating the cart path right here. In addition, it's changing the setbacks of 2 lots. Those are minor changes from 45 feet to 30 feet. Those are still greater than our required setbacks, but that changes the setbacks for lots 13 and 14. And then the rest of the track, the big track that's still here undeveloped, is being divided into 2 tracks that kind of coincides with the zoning splits from R1A and R1C. So again, these are all fairly minor changes on this. Tech review looked at the plat. Everything is correct, and it's ready for final approval. And Mr. Sharp's here with his engineer if you guys have any questions. But again, we're just revising a couple lots, a couple setbacks, and redividing the undeveloped portion of property.
Mr. Chairman, make a motion to approve this plat. We have a motion and a second. All in favor? Motion passed.
All right, the next plat is wait just a second here. This plat is Jody Sharp Construction Company. Again, this is what we unofficially call a major plat. The reason it's a major plat because it has a new street as part of that, so it has public improvements as part of this subdivision. So it's what we call major plat. It's showing new roadway, 18 lots, 18 residential lots, and it's on the south side of Ridgeview Drive. It's titled Colonial Heights 2, Phase 1. And again, this property is zoned R1A. It was attempted, as you all know, there was an application to rezone it to R1C, which failed, and the developer is now going to develop it under the R1A standards, which is the existing zoning that goes back to the 70s or whatnot. Again, this is just a portion of the property, and you can see the location map up in the right corner. It kind of shows you the 32 acres that is this entire tract. And again, just a portion of this property is being proposed to be subdivided. That's just over 7 acres. Again, shows a new street configuration. that moves to the south and then comes to a new stub street that's named Jerry Lynn Road. And everything is technically correct as far as the subdivision regulations. It went through tech review and is ready for final approval. This being a major plat, there would have to be a bond placed with us for the road construction, a set of construction plans, a developer contract, and an administrative fee that has to all come into us before the developer can move forward with this portion of a subdivision project. Mr. Sharp's here, and his engineer surveyor, Kendall Wise, is here too, if you guys have any questions about the project. And it was on tech review. I think we walked through it again. These are just 18 lots as an extension of Colonial Heights.
We have a motion to approve. And we have a second, any discussion? All in favor? Motion passes. Item number 3.
Plat number 3 is William and Judy Belcher have applied for a subdivision on Traxland containing 1.324 acres located at 23 and 25 Spring Street in Junction City, Kentucky. Pretty straightforward plat here. Again, it's in your packet. They're just adding a piece of property from one property to the other, and you can see that in this general location right here. So when the two lots, the new acreage, 25 Spring Street will be 0.443 acres, and 23 Spring Street will be 0.881 acres. And again, just a portion of 25 is being moved to the south to 23 Spring Street. Steve Carroll is the surveyor, and he's here if you guys have any questions. The plat is correct and is ready for final approval.
Chairman, I make a motion to approve. We have a motion to approve. Okay, we have a second. All in favor? Motion passes. Item 4.
Plat number 4 needs to be postponed. It went through preliminary approval and is technically correct. However, the property owner is revising possibly a layout. So the surveyor, Mr. Carroll, indicated this plat needs to be postponed. Will probably be reconfigured slightly and go through preliminary approval next month, if that's what the property owner's desire. So we'll just skip that one for today.
Item 5.
Item 5, Billy Stewart and Lisa Norvell have applied for approval of subdivision containing 219 acres, 219.735, located at 4205 Ulm Springs Road. And that plat is in this configuration, and it's a little busy, but it's pretty straightforward. A little portion here is being added to the farm. We're creating this track, and obviously this track's getting a little smaller. This is an AGE plat, and Dale's here. If you have any questions, let me look at my notes in a little more detail. Track C will be 9.44 acres, and when the sliver's added to the farm track, Track A is going to be 206.324, and Track B then ends up just over 3 acres. So we're reconfiguring 2 tracks and creating 1 new track. The property is zoned agriculture.
Will we approve? We have a
next item is Jerry and Teresa Smothers have applied for approval of subdivision tract containing 11.622 acres located at 1921 and 2035 Harrodsburg Road, Perryville, Kentucky. Property zoned agriculture. And again, just kind of a reconfiguration of two tracks. AGE is the surveyor, and Dale's here if you have any questions. Track A will be 1.363 acres, and Track B will be 10.259 acres. And the plat is technically correct and is ready for final approval.
I make a motion to accept.
We have a motion to approve. And we have a second. All in favor? Motion passes. 7.
Plat number 7 is John and Melanie Eppington have applied for a subdivision tract containing 3.995 acres located at 84 Wells Landing Road, Danville, Kentucky. Property is zoned agriculture. Again, this tract's being cut off a larger farm, and the plat needs one item. You can see there's a structure. The barn sits in the 50-foot front setback. There'll need to be a note, a non-conforming note will have to be added to that structure. It's there and it sits in the setback, so it's fairly minor note. Everything else on the plat is technically correct. AGE is the surveyor. If you have any questions, and again, the larger farm tract is not part of the plat. It's just the lot that's being carved off the farm.
Move to approve. We have a motion to approve. And we have a second. All in favor? Thank you. Motion passes. Number 8.
All right, number 8 is Michael and Pamela Lane have applied for approval of subdivision on Traxland containing 24.952 acres located at 75 Spears Lane, Danville, Kentucky. Property is zoned agriculture. Steve Carroll is the surveyor, and this is another kind of busy plat, but we're consolidating lots. We're going to have a remaining piece, and we had a landlocked piece that's being addressed. So I'll try to walk you through all these. There's a lot of kind of pieces on this. So to start with, I'll point up here, this was a landlocked piece of property that existed on this. It was in a separate tract. It's being added to this bigger farm tract. You can see the lines right here that consolidate those. There's, this tract is being added, this was part of that tract is being added to this property, as well as this piece is being added to this. So when it's all said and done, this will be one tract, you see right here. And it'll be 1.74. The consolidated tract will be 6.030. So when it's all said and done, again, it's kind of hard to see. You'd have to follow it, but if you follow this line, this entire piece then will be one property. And it'll be just over 6 acres. The remaining tract 2 right here, which a little piece of this came off of in the back, will be 1.150, and the rest of the farm tract will be, the consolidated tract will be 12.020 acres. There's also property owned. These lots are not part of the plat. These are platted lots that sort of make this bend. This is neighboring property, but we're dealing with kind of, there'll be 3 parcels when it's all said and done. Steve Carroll's a surveyor. The plat is technically correct. If you guys have any questions, Steve can answer those. And the plat's ready for final approval.
Make a motion to approve. We have a motion to approve. Second, sir. Okay, we have a second. All in favor? Is everybody saying?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Plat 9, I'm going to turn it over to our attorney, and we have another attorney in the room that's going to kind of lead on this. This is a unique kind of process. We don't see these all the time. This is a revocation request. So as you all know, when you guys create subdivisions, we record those in the courthouse. There are occasions where plats have to be revoked or repealed for different reasons, and this is one of those situations. And I'll let Henry and Attorney Chris Heron address that. This relates to 3 different plats that are currently recorded and some different deed situations. And I'll let them explain all that to you. I'll walk you through I've got exhibits for all the situations here that we can go through. As they go through, I'll turn them, and they should be in your packet. But there's a letter from Mr. Heron and in your packet, and we'll let them sort of walk you through what the request is.
You were presented with these 3 plats in your packet. If you were able to piece together what happened, then good for you. But I'll walk through starting with that 2005 plat, and we're looking at lots 17 and 16. That's their initial configuration. You turn the page and jump ahead to 2013, and there is a plat that consolidates 17 and 16 on Poppy Court, which poses a problem when you look into plat 20, the 2020 plat. It shows 16 is still being separate and conveying off a sliver of it. I think the transaction that's contemplated now is selling 16 or 17, but we have that plat from 2013 of record that says that they've been consolidated. And I think that subsequent deeds have not made reference to that plat. They've only considered the original 2005 plat that had them as 2 separate pieces. This has caused problems for the bank extending building loans for some of these properties, and the solution that was reached by the handful of attorneys that were involved in this was to revoke the consolidation plat. When 16 and 17 were combined, no one recognized or took action upon that plat. No one bought the consolidated property. Subsequent deeds pretended as if the 2 lots were still separate. And so the action before you today is pretty rare. We don't often hear requests to revoke a plat, but based on the way that subsequent purchasers have proceeded and what land everyone thinks they own today, the best way to effectuate that is to get rid of the consolidation, that 2013 plat. So that's the request before you. I've spoken with Chris about the documentation that's been submitted. Given that this is such a rare situation, he's been obliging about, and he can confirm or deny this, but he's been obliging about providing a set of affidavits that tell what the statute requires, which is that no lot has been sold from the revoked plat. So if you're looking at that consolidation of 17 and 16, that consolidated piece has never been sold. 16 and 17 separately have been conveyed since, but that's based on that 2005 separate configuration. So we're going to have affidavits that say the large piece was never sold. We're going to strike it from the record, and there will be a notation in the county clerk's office that reflects that. What's confusing is that there is that subsequent plat, which slices off the bottom part of 16. We're going to leave that of record. That's if the 2005 plat still keeps 16 and 17 separate, and someone has purchased based on that, we're going to leave that lot 16A shown on the screen now. We're going to leave that 2020 plat intact. And I think that'll need to be part of the notation that we put on the revoked 2013 plat. That's a lot of numbers. I just heard myself saying if any of you all have questions, I or Chris are happy to answer them for you.
Who requested that they be put together, that they be platted together? And does that person sign the papers today to say that they're okay with that being separated out?
Who did that originally?
Chris, you have to go.
Still Gregory.
Chris, could you, sorry, thank you.
State your name.
My name's Chris Heron. So Still Gregory originally, he was like the developer of this Williamsburg Village. And I believe at one point, when those 16 and 17 had not sold, he's like, I'm gonna build a house out here, so I'm gonna combine 16 and 17 and make it into just one big lot. And it never sold, and actually, I think he's in a Ephraim McDowell nursing facility currently. But the LLC, Graybrook Meadows LLC, carries on. And they actually, when I did this, I've had one of his daughters, who's one of the managers of this LLC, sign off as well to agree to this. Because I'm trying to just kind of clear up a title nightmare due to the fact that 16 and 17 have been sold, but pursuant to the old 1549A plat. Because one would think that, when 1549 was created, it created many lots, not just lots 16 and 17, a multitude of lots, and then the 1884 just combined those two together, which would, one would say, well, then that got rid of 16 and 17 from 1549. So that's kind of why we're doing that, because they always referred back to the old 1549, and it's just messing things up for the purchasers who have since purchased 16 and 17 as they thought it was from 1549.
To clarify, Mr. Gregory did that under the auspices of Graybrook Meadows LLC?
Right. He either did under that, or there was a formerly Graybrook Meadows. They've kind of changed names a little bit, but it's now it's Graybrook Meadows LLC, formerly Graybrook just Meadows. So
Got it.
But yes, it's the same company did that.
Okay.
And they're fine with that. They're the ones that actually have hired me to try to fix this for everybody, because they feel bad that that 16 and 17 have been sold pursuant to the old plat, and they just want to help to cure this for the current people who think they own lot 16 and 17, which 16 and 17 really don't exist.
He sold 16 and 17.
Well, he did, but I mean, if you think about 1884, kind of like Nick's 16 and 17, so he really didn't sell 16 and 17. So that's why they thought that they bought 16 and 17 pursuant to that the old plat 1549A, but afterwards 1884 came along and it got rid of 16 and 17, technically. So we're just going back to the way that the purchasers thought that they bought it in the first place.
Graybrook Meadows.
Pardon?
Mr. Gregory
Yes.
is Graybrook Meadows.
Yes.
And he sold 16 and 17.
He did. He thought he sold 16 and 17, but pursuant to Melanie Thorne,
Also thought he had combined it. Knew he had combined it.
the people that bought it did not think that he had combined it.
He sold it. Who sold it?
Graybrook Meadows sold 16, what they purported as lot 16 and
Who
17.
combined the lots?
The Graybrook Meadows.
Who sold the lots?
They sold 16 and 17. They never sold 16A, which is the 1884. What?
Same company, but different management. That's what I'm saying. If they bought it, they combined it and then they sold it, so they should have known. Should have.
Well, I agree. I wasn't.
And how does this go? When's the first lot sold when?
Several years ago.
16 sold first, I believe. To Chris's point, really 16, 17, a portion of 16A was sold on a consolidated plat. It was sold, and then a portion of 16 that you see there was then sold to the property to the south.
I guess my point is this going to cause confusion in the future?
They're going to.
The way we're doing this, that it's obviously caused confusion in the present.
It should clean everything up. What Chris has done is took an extra step, was he got an affidavit from Graybrook Meadows, who is technically the owner, I guess, of the consolidated lot, or maybe not, but then also got affidavits of
Everybody involved.
everyone that's involved that bought a portion of that, or the 2020 plat, the McLaughlin property that bought a portion of 16. So there's actually 4 affidavits in our file from all affected property owners at this point in time. The plan is to do deeds of correction, I believe, to correct all these title chain issues.
Right, I'm gonna do a deed of correction and reference all this, and,
All of it.
I mean, really, that 16A, you say bought, what it is, the Mosses, I guess, part of that lot at the very back of it, which connects with Raleigh Court, there's like a creek, and then there's like, just like a little sliver, that .008 acres, and the McLaughlins have been mowing that all the time, and the Mosses are like, you can just have it if you're mowing it, we really don't wanna walk across this creek and mow, so they, you know, if you look at the deed to them, it's like consideration of $1, they just gave it to them, you know, to just made it clear, they didn't wanna walk across the creek to mow that little bitty sliver of .008 acres.
Another way of, my question is along your line. If I'm 10 years or 20 years down the road, the deed of correction that you're talking about proposing should have enough information to satisfy future loan situations of future buyers and
Right.
sellers.
Because I'm gonna go do it,
That's
I'm
what
gonna
we're
do a
trying to
deed
get
of
to.
correction for, not only the Mosses, but
Right.
the Thomasons that purchased lot 17.
Okay.
And currently building a
And-
house on that.
Yeah,
Yeah, I think that's the cleanest way. The deed of correction will be the permanent document. It's
That
easy to
and
find.
McLaughlin, we're gonna do it for all
Yeah.
three to clear that up, and what Steve was saying, that there'll be a reference, in the 21, I can't remember that, the one that did the little bitty sliver.
21,
24 plat.
There'll be like a cross-reference
Right.
on that.
And that trail is an important trail. That's what I'm getting
Right.
to. So we won't have to come back and future people look at this again and say, okay, I don't know what happened back then.
Right, I think I'm
We
gonna make
really
it,
don't know what happened back then.
The bank was involved.
I saw that already once, several times.
Yes.
agree.
Chris, could you state again what that reference was, that there was going to be some notation referencing the 2020 plat as well?
I mean, I thought that's what you said a minute ago, that, I was just kinda going off of what you said,
Right.
that, in the revocation of, I mean, if it goes through, of the 1884, you're gonna put some kind of cross-reference about the 2124B. I was just taking it from what you said.
So
Well, if I said that, then I'm glad I did. I think that's the
'Cause
right
I
way
think
to.
that'll be helpful.
I think tying them together is going to be important in the deed of
Yes,
correction. Just a
yes.
statement so that the story's easier to gather together.
So the question I have, and Henry and I have already talked about, is what action, if this body takes action to revoke that plat, what are we actually taking to the courthouse? We're not
Yeah.
replatting. And we typically would take a land use certificate, which will be a one-page document that will say, normally it says subdivision or zone change or site plan, it'll say other, and it'll say revocation plat. And it'll probably just have this plat showing that we're revoking this plat, but we won't have all these references on our
That's-
land use certificate. It'll just be putting to record that this plat was revoked. Then the clerk, I understand, would probably put some kind of notation on this plat in the sleeve saying it's been revoked. We'll put the land use certificate into the deed book, but we won't actually be touching this plat in any form. It's already recorded, it's in the clerk's office. We'll be putting the land use certificate saying we're revoking 1884, and maybe there's some kind of statement that we can put behind that land use certificate, the findings, let's say, or,
I think we need to put something to tie it together, and it's your choice, whatever it is, but I
Well,
think we need more than just a
well,
statement
the
that we
deeds are
revoke
gonna
it.
do that. I mean, that's the
The
thing.
deeds
is
will give me
deed-
what I need, I
yeah.
believe.
The deeds and the plats. So,
Yes.
you know, the notation in the margin, which is what the statute requires, I think can make reference that 2124B survives. And we'll also have the recorded certificate of land use restriction. And I think that's belt and suspenders. I think that covers it.
Okay.
Can I ask a procedural question? When I hear the words the deeds will be corrected, like, who owns the deed? Who is the person like, if somebody came to me and said, hey, we're gonna correct your deed, I'm sure that they're all okay with it. I think that all three of them want that. I guess what I'm asking for is that, is anybody in the future gonna be able to come back and say, hey, look what these guys just did, man, they changed deeds, like, is that possible? I know that the answer is yes, I just wanna make it so clean. Does that, you concept I'm trying to get across because I'm not doing it well.
No, I think so too. Yes, I want to make it very
It needs to be
clear.
so clean that we don't want to set a precedent that somebody else in the future can go, hey, let's go correct some deeds, look at this.
Right, I mean, there's a lot, I mean, people
happens.
have to correct deeds
All the
all the
time.
time, but the persons that would sign off on a deed of correction would be the original, seller, and then the person that they, and the buyer, which, would be the Mosses, would be the McLaughlins, and actually would be the Thomasons. Now, the deed of correction for the McLaughlins would, the buyer, or the seller, actually, technical seller would be the Mosses, because Graybrook Meadows had nothing to do with that little .008 that was
Right.
after the fact.
And the bank's involved too, that's kind of where some of this started. Lot 17, there's a home under construction, and the bank caught some of this too, and the bank will obviously sign off on, and we've actually talked with the bank's attorney too, that this process suits them to revoke this plat, all these deeds of corrections to get done, so that when it's all said and done, Lot 17 is back to its original configuration to the satisfaction of the bank and the mortgage company there.
And I don't mind, like, when I prepare a deed of correction, if, I'll run it by Steve
Or Henry.
or Henry, just say, hey, do you think that this is clear enough, now to notify people 100 years down the road, what happened? And I'm fine, with that, and once we're on the same page, as far as if they think that's good enough, or if they say, well, no, you need to add another sentence in here to make it even clearer, I'm fine with that.
Ms. Michael, is this, I guess Henry or Steve, one, is this the best avenue for resolving this issue?
I think it works, I'll let Henry, a replat would have probably been a tad bit cleaner, would have took a lot longer, required another surveyor to be involved. This could have all been just replatted to correct all these. There still would have had to been deeds of corrections done though, even if it was replatted, so it works either way. This is, if it was all replatted to get it back to those configurations, and lot 16 now is shorter, you still got to correct all those deeds after it was replatted, so.
Yeah, so if like somebody buys a property in a couple of years that's below 16, will the bank be okay, will the bank that sells that, or that gives the loan to that homeowner, be okay with saying that strip was conveyed from a property that at some point didn't really exist because it had been replatted and then unplatted?
Well, but
That's
this,
the question, is the bank gonna be okay with that?
well, but when we undo the consolidation plat and get back to 16 and 17, this plat actually is technically correct because it also skipped the 1884 plat and put the prior plat reference on here.
Yeah.
So this plat will be technically correct because it lists the 1549A plat right here. And this will be their configuration, and this will be 16, and 17 goes back to the original. So it's, with the deeds of corrections, it should be, all three lots should be correct.
Basically, everybody acted on the 1549A. They all acted on it, so, I know it's not that easy, like, to revoke, but if you take that away, then it actually just makes everything
Everything.
back to where it
Yeah.
should have been, like.
I think it's really an idea, and everybody signed up.
Right.
Yep.
Yes.
So why don't you choose not to just replat it? That would be.
We talked about that. There were
Something to do.
options, I talked to Steve about that. I talked to a surveyor. I talked to the surveyor from AGE that had done it. I talked to a lot of people. Talked to Vince Pennington. Because they're the one, or that was that did the deeds in the first. Not he didn't necessarily do it, but that they felt that would be the best way to do this. And also, there's kind of a time crunch because we feel bad for Mr. Thomason. They're trying to close up on their
That didn't
loan.
Stop them.
Well, because they were acting on, they just found this out fairly recently. We all found out this problem recently,
Mr. Chairman,
within the last month.
Yeah, oh yeah, it happened fairly quick.
I mean, as soon as I found out about this, I acted on it, because I want to help him to, I don't want to tie up, interest rates going up and so forth. I wanted to, this would be the best, quickest, and we feel the most efficient way, because we had 3 or 4 attorneys that put their heads together, before going this route.
Mr. Chairman, as much as Steve and I have talked about this, and it's a fair amount, I still waver on why the platting versus the revocation, replatting versus revocation, one is better than the other. I think to Mr. Ruby's question, Dr. Ruby's question, I think that what we're doing today will render correct everything that is of record, and I think it's as clean a solution as any.
More clean than replat.
I can't edge one over the other.
My concern is, I guess, we're doing something that everybody says is extremely rare.
Right, sure,
As opposed to something we do every day.
true. Valid point.
So, are there any ramifications of having done this for future folks who might come along and say, well, I want to do some revocation? Is that a future ramification for our action?
It's not even really a discretionary matter. It's kind of an exact statutory, like they hand you this documentation and the commission has to do it. I think that the pain involved with it and the hopefully rare situation of, overlooking a plat will mean that we won't see many of these applications. If people were to come in for revocations regularly, then it's not a discretionary matter. It's not like if we approve this zone change, that'll lay the groundwork for future zone changes. It's simply a ministerial matter. And I think that the proposition that people will spend money to have surveys and plats done and then think, well, I'll just toss all that work out, I'll have it revoked. I think that's an unlikely scenario.
The statute that's in your packet lays out that revocations can happen. It doesn't say how they happen and what scenarios they happen. It just says, if they happen, here's the affidavit, and you all approve them. I've only been involved in probably 3 revocations in my 30 years. 2 were court directives. Circuit Court required a revocation for whatever reason. Another one was again, all the plats we just did, there could be something that maybe there's an error or someone changes their mind. Hey, I don't want to, that easement's not going to be there after all, or we've agreed to a different driveway entrance. There's lots of reasons why a plat may need to be revoked.
I think
Procedure.
we can agree, this was being asked to be revoked simply because they didn't want to replat.
No, not necessarily. We're doing it, I felt like this was the fastest, most efficient way.
To get it
I
back.
talked to, I didn't just, I've talked to a surveyor about this, I've talked to numerous attorneys, and even the surveyor felt like this would be a clear, clean way to do it. So no, it's not like we're being lazy or anything like that. I think that we feel like this would be
Something
an adequate way to do
very
so.
rare done.
Well, yes, a lot of things are, this just happened and I'm trying to fix it.
So one interesting thing, and it's outside of all the realm of the attorneys, it's something I learned during this process is a lot of people, when they're looking at properties, they look at PVA, they look at deeds, they look at plats in the clerk's office. One of the challenges here was if you open the PVA's data set, the lots existed in that configuration because the PVA, when we record a plat, when we consolidated that plat, it doesn't necessarily put that plat to record in the tax office. It just puts it to record in the clerk's office. So when those 2 lots were consolidated, that was 1 lot. But it still showed as 2 because the PVA is redrawing those lines based on deed transfers, not the recordation of plats. So even the lot, the McLaughlin piece right there that you see, that's the way the PVA shows it today, even though they own this portion right here or had bought that. That's part of the challenges when you look at the PVA, whether it be the surveyor or maybe an attorney, those tracts are related to deed transfers. So all these plats we just did, until there's a deed underneath it, it doesn't necessarily get reconfigured in the PVA's office.
I guess that's my question too. They bought that piece of property from someone else, shouldn't they replatted their lot to show that?
Well, that was replatted in 2020, that one was. That was replatted. Unfortunately, it was replatted from a lot that didn't look like this, it was replatted from a lot that looked like this. So, it's just literally, a plat got missed in the title search, it appears, for 3 different sales. And so, to Chris's point, to revoke the 1884 plat gets it back pretty clean, because interesting enough, lot 17 needs to be exactly this, 16 will be slightly different. So, I don't see this happening on a regular basis, because this was a situation where 2 lots were consolidated, now they're being broke back apart. Most time we're platting property that then sells, it's in the configuration someone wants it. Again, the only revocations I've been involved in were court orders where there was an estate issue or someone didn't sign off on something properly or something, so.
Well, I'll make a motion that we approve the revocation of the subdivision tracts.
Mr. Manning, if I might offer some language, I think some of this will go into the land use restriction that we're authorizing. Can I propose? Motion, okay, plat 1884A was recorded but subsequently overlooked to correct what is perceived to be an inadvertent mistake, subject to KRS 100.285, move to authorize the chairman to sign a notation acceptable to the county clerk saying that the 2013 plat is revoked and the subsequent 2020 plat remains in force. This will be conditioned upon the sign-off of all affected owners noted in packet materials today, as well as Graybrook Meadows, the initial consolidator and conveyor of these lots. And those affidavits would need to state that no person purchased a lot shown on the revoked 2013 plat. We also find that written approval from utilities is unnecessary because the 2013 plat made no additional conveyance of easements to any utility.
You did that really well.
Yeah.
So, and let me clarify. So you're gonna type that up
Yeah.
in that, and then the chairman would sign it, we would put that behind the land use certificate.
Right. The statute says the chairman signs the note on the plat.
And there won't be a plat, there'll be just a land use certificate.
Right,
In the deed
well-
book. See, now this is where this gets down a little bit in the weeds.
The revocation, the land use certificate?
Both. There's a note on the margin, it says that signed by the chairman or other duly authorized officer of the commission.
So
So
what-
you could vote to authorize,
Well, I think the chairman's fine. I think what has happened is if you go, there's been a handful of plats revoked in this county. And what happens is there's a motion, there's some text, and what happens is the plat that's hanging, they put a black line through the plat, and they slide a piece of paper in the sleeve. We're not actually signing anything on the plat, or we're just putting a piece of paper on the sleeve, which will be the same, in my opinion, it'll be this land use certificate, and we'll also record it in the deed book. So we'll put it in 2 places.
Henry, is that acceptable?
and
I
it'll-
would not cross the county clerk. I think if that's their
If that's
practice,
what they
then
want,
that's.
yeah.
Yes, then that
So,
sounds.
so my
like
question
the
is,
issue.
this will be typed up, the chairman will sign it, I'll take it over and give it to the clerk, and they'll put it in whatever place they
That's-
see fit.
You have a motion, right?
Okay, we got a motion.
I'd like
now
to
we have a second.
second, okay.
Now discussion. Well, that is the motion now, because it wasn't seconded yet, so.
The other part, I want to make sure, Chris, that if I'm recording the land certificate, I'm assuming that we have to pay the county clerk $50 for that. And we didn't get payment on it, but, or maybe they'll just accept all this as a correction and they won't charge us, but it shouldn't be a charge to revise the plat file, because we're just putting something in it. But the land use certificate being a new recordation.
There's a fee, we'll pay it.
Okay. I just want to make sure I know what I'm physically doing to get this into the courthouse, because the bank called yesterday and wanted to know how quick we're gonna get this done.
Right.
So they can get something in the clerk's office, so it's gonna start with you typing something first.
I understand why we're doing it, but I don't like the fact that we're not doing what we should be doing. And, I don't know how long, this has been going on for over a month, I don't know how long it would take to get a survey and get a plat approved.
It would have interesting, as soon as the bank called and Chris called me, he's letters dated, the surveyor would have, they're all out, I don't know, a month, 2 months, some of them, so it would have took some time to get a new survey done and a new plat, depending what firm. This put it in a 30-day window as opposed to maybe a 2 or 3 month window.
Yeah, but shouldn't we be writing it first? Shouldn't we be writing it first?
But to Henry's point, I think either way works as long as the deeds of corrections are done.
We're not doing anything wrong.
One's quicker than the other.
I just wondered if we would do this, how many other people would we do this for?
Hopefully none in the future.
I mean, how many people have asked to revoke a plat?
It's
Probably
been
not very many.
very rare. I think the last one was, I mean, it's a long time ago. We've only done a handful in the history of this planning commission.
Call for a vote.
We've got a motion, we've got a second, and if there's any further discussion, I'll vote. All in favor? All opposed? Just like it should have been done the correct way, I think.
I won't argue with that. I said either way was the correct way, so.
Thank you.
So, thank you.
Thanks, Chris.
All right, we have a public hearing.
All right, I guess that's me. We have a public hearing. Matt Frederick has filed an application to rezone the tract of land containing .475 acres located at 390 South Lucas Street in Junction City, Kentucky. The requested zone change from single family to general business. It's gonna look a little strange on paper when we're zoning from single family to general business, but we gotta back up and think about where we're at. We're in Junction City, and there's no slight there. What is in actuality is, you have to remember Junction City was not part of planning and zoning from approximately 2009 to 2020. So there's a lot of things that happened in the city during those interim years when they were not part of planning and zoning. There were no rules. You could build houses in commercial zones and commercial and residential zones and apartments and industrial. All those things occurred. And what's happened since that time, there's a storage building facility on South Lucas, and there's a shot of it right there on the screen. And there's a barn right next door that I just found out recently used to be a club or bar or hangout. And it looks like a barn, but it was a pretty active nighttime venue there.
It's a dance hall.
Dance hall, is that what we
Dance
called them
hall,
back
yeah, it
then?
was.
Dance hall, there you go.
Dance hall.
It's a barn today,
heard.
I think. And all this is owned single family. You see the old sign that's up there, M&M Auto Sales. This is an old aerial. What happened is this property sold. Mr. Frederick didn't cause any of these issues. He's bought the property and he wants to get it legal. It's that simple. So this is a situation we're gonna run into in the city of Junction City as they've come back into zoning. We're gonna have situations where we have development that's in the wrong zone. We brought the map back forward when they came back into planning and zoning in 2020. We didn't correct anything on the zoning map. We just brought it back where it was in 2009. And there's storage buildings now on this property, zoned single family. Here's an aerial shot looking down at the facility of the storage buildings. There's the zoning plat that Vantage did. Here's the zoning map, and you can see there's the single-family zone, there's the dance hall and a big parking lot, and there's the storage facilities. It's all zoned single-family. So what the applicant is doing with this application is asking the Planning Commission to consider approving a commercial zone change request to get this thing legal, to get it in its right zoning district so he can move forward as the owner and own a piece of property that's properly zoned. The future land use map, again, shows as low density, but as you know, the state law requires you all to consider compliance with the comprehensive plan, or an absence of, you can make other findings, one of which deals with inappropriate zoning classifications. And that's what this request was made under, to get this thing in a commercial zone so it's in the right zone. It could have stopped right there. However, the property owner, we talked about conditions. And if he was gonna rezone, it'd still be good to limit this to some form or fashion, because by zoning commercial, it opens up the door for other things, and he did just that. And the conditions are outlined on page 6 of your staff report, and I'll walk you through some of those. What these do is make sure that what's going to happen on the property stays kind of that scale and style. The applicant agreed to the total building square footage. He does potentially want to build another building up in the front section to sort of square these off. There was a car dealer there at one time. He's not in the car business, and he limits some of those uses out. The signage is fairly small for commercial zones, could be way bigger than that. Any newer expanded areas would be paved, and then he limited the uses to self-storage, office, professional, or especially retail, because I guess there can be situations where one of the units could be a small office in the front. But there would be no, he's legislated out with the conditions, detention, eating, commercial lot, animal hospital, veterinary and auto-related sales, fuel stations, a lot of things that you can do in general business. And then the property is limited to his existing access point on South Lucas. Again, we didn't have a lot of issues here. This is truly a cleanup rezoning. We've done these here in Danville for some properties. We're probably going to do more of these in Junction City in the future to deal with some of these uses that were constructed during those interim periods when there was no planning and zoning. Mr. Frederick's here. If you have any questions of him, I don't know if you guys went out and visited the site. I think he's talked to the city too on the front end, or I know I've talked with the mayor and let him know that there was a project being proposed. The sign went out, the letters went out. We really didn't get any feedback from any of the neighbors. It's been there. Most of them talked about the dance hall, and literally, I got a question, was the dance hall coming back? And I said, we're not dealing with that property next door. And as far as I know, it's been void, gone, so it lost its non-conforming status. And right now, it's just a barn.
Steve, I might be able to ask you, but I may have to ask later. Up to 12,000 square feet is what we're suggesting it is. How many square footage do we have now?
This gives him a little wiggle room to do another building. We sort of just put that in there in case he needed to expand. I don't know the exact building square
Do
footage.
you have a round? Is
You
it
had 8,
I think right now it's around 4,000
Okay.
4,000?
12,000.
All the buildings?
between the 3 buildings.
Do we need?
Yeah. I was
Yes, come
thinking, okay, yeah, I don't know the exact number, all the buildings.
Just state your name and address, please.
My name's Matt Frederick, owner of M&M. It's M&M Stores, but we're looking to change the name. But what we're trying to do is we just want to get it rezoned so we can add some to it. It's more of a retirement thing for my wife and I. I'm self-employed, so it's probably more of a retirement thing for me than her. But right now, I think it's about 4,000.
4?
I think it's 4,000 square
I
feet.
don't know the exact number.
I was just trying to get a feel for the size, because if you put 12,000 square foot on that
It's not gonna-
footprint,
Right.
it uses a lot of the space,
Sure.
which is what you're supposed to do, but you need
Right.
to know that going in.
We built some wiggle room in. The goal, though, the problem is there's not a lot of land that can be developed left
That's right.
on that property.
Right.
And with the way the frontage is,
Yeah,
there's just, I
Yeah,
mean, I
what-
guess potentially
I-
could be another building or two.
yeah, I drove by it and thought, how do you gonna put 12,000 square foot in there is what I kept thinking. It's like,
Right.
and discovered it'd have to be very carefully laid out.
Sure. And Steve and I, we had talked about that, and I think we were just putting a safe number on that as far as the square footage.
Yeah, they'd have to bring a site plan back.
up
and-
to-
I was gonna
I
say
don't-
that, as long as that's, you know that's going in, that
Yeah.
that would have to happen.
Yeah, I don't think there's
That'd
any,
be fine.
I don't think there's any way we could put
There you
12,000
go.
square feet
Yeah,
on there.
It would be a lot.
Yes, it would. You'd almost have to have a double-decker storage, I think, to do
Yeah,
something
and
like
that's-
that.
It's a
Right.
different down in that area,
Mm-hmm.
because it's also not a large road and street if you drive down it.
It's not, yep. Mhm.
What we were thinking is if the property was ever redeveloped as office, because he allowed the office use.
Yes.
That it could be developed as one box or something. But as storage units, it's going to be pretty limited to what footprint, because he has to have all the travel
Correct.
ways. But thinking for the future, if it was redeveloped under general business, what would be a reasonable square footage on that?
Right, you don't need as much open gravel space between buildings.
That's right.
As you do in a storage building, you need a lot of space for that. Who's concerned, okay.
And that's all existing gravel. We talked about that too. All that's predates P and Z, so it's all grandfathered in. Any newer expanded parking, he's agreed to pave, but As long as he keeps everything like that, he's kind of good to go, assuming the zone change moves forward. And that's kind of where he is with it being grandfathered in anyhow.
So
You
the
got-
zone change is just for this one lot?
That's it.
Yeah.
That's the only property.
And the flume has this for all residential?
It did, but you gotta remember the flume went away and in 2009, there was no flume in Junction City, there was no zoning. And we have stuff.
Do we intend it to go back to, though? I mean, do we intend to, not this lot, but I'm talking about in general, do we want to go, you know, I guess what I'm asking is, what do we want to do then with this, now that they're back in P and Z? Do we want to do it in conjunction with the flume or not?
Well, we're not proposing mending the flume with this, so this is more, get the zoning right, but down the road, if this whole area is redeveloped, the flume still shows that low density is the land use classification. In this case, the inappropriate zoning option allows you all to not use the comprehensive plan as your basis to evaluate it, but to determine whether this is in the wrong zoning district.
And Tom, that's what I thought when I read this thing. It's just an inappropriate, just because of the events happened. And what you're saying will happen again. Another property, maybe the dance hall, but some other property will have the same event.
We've got issues down Shelby Street with storage buildings and residential.
Absolutely.
We've got apartments and we've got houses in industrial. Again, there was no planning and zoning. There was a period of construction
And I
and
think that
projects.
Cleaning that up is gonna take time, Tom. Exactly what you're saying. It's gonna take time.
But in accordance with some overarching, like when we say clean it up is gonna take time, that will take time because there's a lot of different things in different areas.
Mhm.
But when we say clean it up, it ought to be in accordance with some vision, right? Not just each one, whatever we feel like at that time.
Well,
We're grandfathering though with something
Yes,
that's already.
that's what we're actually doing right now.
correct. The grandfathering is what it is.
Well, it's grandfather now. The zoning would make the particular parcel legal under the zoning classification. But yes, it would not be in compliance with the future land use map, but it's not in compliance with it right
It's
now.
a non-conforming use now.
It would be, yes. When they came back into the planning, and we've got non-conforming uses for setbacks, for structures, for garages, for carports, houses, businesses. Again, a lot of things were constructed. We're gonna see variances in the future. We've done variances in Junction City, simply as properties are transferring, the bank is catching things. We've got a lot of non-conformities because, again, there was, 11, 12 years of no planning and zoning. And that's what, unfortunately, we're doing.
And thank you for your patience, because it's just an additional bigger picture on there.
I
don't know
understand.
that, yeah, you've done a very good job of outlining in the path. I agree heavily.
Thank you.
So just go to the flume real quick. I think it's an interesting point. We worked with the city when they came back into planning and zoning to work on a new future land use map. So we actually built a new future land use map with their reentry back. We didn't fix the zoning map. And so we've labeled land uses all kinds of things for the future. To Commissioner Ruby's point, a lot of moderate density where it's single, a lot of commercial where there's houses. That's future land use. It's going to be more applicable as people come in on, let's say, vacant lots and develop it. What is the future land use map, or if they're trying to rezone it? The zoning classifications are all over the place for the actual uses all over the city. So that's your option is, do you take a case like this and say, well, let's follow the future land use and the comp plan and thou shalt be low density, or do you look at this from a zoning standpoint to get the property legal on behalf of the property owner, so, and it's in the built environment, and get it in its right classification? We've got duplexes and single family, it's just, I'm dealing with a property on Bell's Lane right now, it's all industrial, and there's houses there. The Housing Authority has a project there, it's all zoned industrial. Some of that's multifamily too, so these uses just don't gel with the map. So that's your all's decision. Do we fix the map in this case, follow the flume for new development, and move forward in that pattern?
Okay, so where are we in our hearing?
I'm done unless you guys have any questions for me.
Anybody pro or con?
Any input from the audience?
Any
Yes,
opposition or?
In opposition to this, do we have anybody that wants to speak in favor of this zone change? Seems like there's a
We're
lot
used to
of
having
That-
that all the time.
Not me. I'm definitely in favor of it.
Yes, thank you.
Do we have any questions for the applicant?
I commend the applicant for trying to make it right with, within the law. I think that the longer term issue for us is gonna be, if there's gonna be a lot of cleanup that's coming down the road, and each one is gonna be an individual thing to try to make right with whatever is the law today, then we're just gonna be, I don't know how the bloom is even applicable now.
Well, one interesting way is what you just heard, neighbors. I think in the future, as we have cases, assuming injunction,
I
the
think it's
neighbors
im-
were notified, the letters went out. No one seemed to be that upset with this
It would
proposal.
be clearly a problem if I had every neighbor around this, is we're not.
It's
we're
a
not
different
talking to
situation.
that.
Yeah, yeah.
It would clearly be. I think you got the information from that region. In this
At
case,
this point, we can close the public hearing, we can stage, and we can have discussion. And consider a motion.
thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Tom, it's going to be the same problem all along. You understand.
Junction City is gonna become our natural experiment.
And
And I say that with a positive
in,
spin on this, because
in,
if you're looking at 20 years of, what happens when there's no zoning down there, and it's not gonna be possible to say to every person, okay, you cannot legally rezone your house, it's an industrial because it's an industrial, and you can't legally rezone this for commercial use, even though it is clearly commercial, but it's in a residential zone. I think it's gonna be a natural experiment. I'm kind of interested to see where it goes.
all right, so it'll be case. I think in this particular case, it's just the zone is inappropriate. That's all it is. It was nothing more than that. I'd like to go ahead and make a motion to approve the zoning that,
Wait a
That-
minute, let's get the motion and let's let Henry.
but before I continue with the motion, Henry, any other thoughts I should have in?
I think there are one or two things we ought to address. First, a preliminary finding that no future land use map amendment is required, as is sometimes required for zone map amendments, because this is one of the stated exemptions where we're correcting a map error. That's an error based on the existing use and stemming from Junction City's departure from and then return to planning and zoning. Then, to support the application for a zone map amendment, we would find that the current zoning is inappropriate due to longstanding use and the history of other small-scale mixed use in the area. Also, that the applicant proposed conditions prohibiting higher intensity uses will contain detrimental effects of rezoning, which is one of the priorities highlighted in the comprehensive plan.
All right, yeah, I'd like to propose including those three items as listed. I could re-echo them unless the committee is okay with this. We'll do that arrangement on there. I'd like to make a motion to approve the proposed zoning plan amendment along with the conditions in the three items based upon the testimony and documented presented here at this public hearing, and that it is consistent with our comprehensive plan in principle, is arrangement on here. So I would like, I request, therefore, the proposed zoning map amendment is in agreement with the adopted comprehensive plan. Further, I request that this motion include the summary of evidence and testimony presented by the witness at this public hearing.
We have a motion for approval of the zone change. Now we have a second. Any discussion? zone change approval.
Thank you.
And then, Mr. Frederick, the next step, this then has to go to the city of Junction City to be considered, and they have to pass it by an ordinance with 2 readings before it be finalized.
Thank y'all so much.
Thank you.
Good luck. Advisory committee report.
They didn't, advisory committee did not meet, no, those are just on.
Personnel committee report, we have an active item. Henry, you want to address this? Please.
Personnel Committee met this morning. Unfortunate and unforeseen circumstances with a planning and zoning employee have taken her out of the office for the foreseeable future. Personnel Committee met to decide how to extend leave to her to cover these circumstances. Committee, after much discussion, including past history in this position, decided to place the employee on unpaid leave. I believe it's through Friday, May 27th of 2022. If the employee is able to return to work before then, provide doctor's documentation of being able to work, then the employee is certainly welcome back. Any questions?
All benefits and
Benefits to continue. The sole distinction was unpaid leave, but yeah, benefits continue throughout this, medical coverage, dental.
we need a motion to approve.
That is the recommended action from the Personnel Committee, and this body needs to move to approve it.
We have a motion to approve the recommendation of the personnel committee. And we have a second. Any discussion? All in favor? Motion passes. Thank you. Thank you, Henry. Budget committee report?
Nothing to report?
Nothing to report?
Let me just add on that real quick, no committee meeting, but the city has been having budget meetings every Thursday as they're working through their budget. Doesn't involve us, but May the 5th, I think at 10:30 will be our slotted time to present our fiscal year 23 budget. So any of y'all are welcome to assist in that meeting. We'll be preparing a small PowerPoint, and the way the process works is all the agencies requesting funding come before the city commission and make a presentation on their request.
May the 5th. What
May the
time?
5th at 10:30 is the time I was sent this week. Yeah. So that's a week from Thursday, a week from tomorrow.
Okay. Any other new business?
We have these other specific items here that we'll walk through under new business. I put a few extra items on here just as a FYI, and we have one discussion item, a little more detailed. First one I want to talk about, and unfortunately all the surveyors just left. But this bill 195 passed. It's up on the screen. You guys don't have to look up. But this is a House bill that passed related to hazardous gas lines, interstate transmission lines. I personally wasn't a big fan of this. This is a very complicated bill for us as a planning commission. It involves the developer, the gas company, and us. I think on its face, it was a lot of support in the legislature because obviously these pipelines are dangerous and can be issues, and there needs to be good notice and on process. But what this does is very problematic, I think, for surveyors, number one, for the planning commission, number two, and for our processes. And I wanted to walk you through what this says so you guys know this passed and went through pretty quick. And I just want to walk you through some stuff in this House Bill 195 and explain what's happening. So to start with, they use the 660-foot standard, which if you guys ever been watching these gas line fights across the country, 660 feet seems to be this number that as long as we're 660 feet away, things might be safe or there's notice needed. And what this says, and you get down to the first page of this is what the developer has to do. This is the surveyor. Number 3 is the developer surveyor's requirement. If they're within 660 feet, they now have to make a notice to the gas company.
To survey it?
Well, here's the issue. They have to make a notice. So typically, let's say a surveyor was doing one lot traditionally, let's say 3 acres. Now they're going to have to go out at least 660 feet in a radius to determine if there's a gas line If there is a gas line, then the surveyor, the developer, property owner have to notify the gas company that they're doing something within that 660 feet. And you can read in number 3 here, it says, for a new residential, non-residential development, so it's whatever, that's located within 660 feet. So again, if this was one big property, no big deal, but, you know, if you're the 2 parcels back, you're now, the surveyors, I don't think, are going to realize that they're going to now have to probably do a 660-foot radius review on every project to see if they fall within that, even though their survey may only be 300 foot deep. Now they're going to need to look 660 every time. So that's the first step of this is someone has to determine within 660 feet whether there's a gas line, and then they have 10 days from the date of their application to us, or 90 days prior to commencement of construction, to make this notice to the gas company. So they're gonna have to tell them, hey, we're doing something at P&Z, and we're just putting you on notice. The next step on page 2, number 4, is the gas company. The gas company then, within 45 days, has to basically recognize that they've got a notice. So again, I don't really know what 4 does, other than within 45 days, they're supposed to verify they got the information. Number 5 says the developer then has to state on the final plat, and we now have to have this note. So under number 5, this is interesting. Pretty much every plat we do, site plan we do, will need a note of this nature if it's within 660 feet of a gas line. So that puts the burden back to us to some degree, that we can't put a plat to record or really approve a plat or site plan until this note is on every document now we have that's within 660 feet.
Hang on. If somebody subdivides their property.
They have to have this note on the plat.
Because they subdivide. That's what I read, Tom.
So it's any plat, site plan, because it's any development, residential or non-residential.
Holy cow, so
Yes. Oh, yeah. Because you're changing it. Development means, well, you're changing the configuration. That's a development. A development of state law is a plat, a site plan, a zone change. Any change, yeah.
So if I buy land from my next door neighbor, I have to pay a surveyor I have to pay a surveyor
Well, it depends.
to come out and find out that I've got nothing, no.
Well, if you're not changing your lot, you're just selling the lot you already have, you wouldn't. But if you're gonna replat your property, there's gonna have to be a survey done to determine whether you're within 660. And then a note's gonna have to go on the plat, but it gets further.
Buy the property and replat it, I have to pay
Well,
a surveyor.
Tom, there's a lot more to this.
Well, you would have to, Tom, if you're replatting your property, you'd have to pay a surveyor anyhow. To replat, you still have to have a surveyor. This gets a little more detailed though, because we're only halfway through. So this is what the developer does, the gas company does, and then what the surveyor has to have on the plat. But then the next one comes to us. Within 60 days of this act, we're supposed to gather and confirm raw national pipeline data for the whole county. So within 60 days, we're supposed to get all the GIS data about pipelines in this county. So way I understand that would work is once this law goes into effect, the gas companies somehow know about this law. And the question is, are they just voluntarily going to shoot us all their data, or are we going to have to go find it? Probably we're going to need to get it, as we know we're dealing with a particular gas line. This goes on the P&Z staff on number 6. Number 7 goes back to the gas companies that no later than August 15th, they're supposed to give us their contact information. And then number 8 goes back, and this goes to you all. Number 8 says the Planning Commission shall not give final approval to a development described under Section 3 until the requirements of this section have been satisfied. A Planning Commission may rely solely on the notes submitted under Section 5, the geospace data under Section 6, and the recordation under Section 7 when determining whether requirements of this section have been satisfied for the purpose of granting final approval to such a development. A planning commission shall not be subject to liability related to the approval or construction of such a development when the approval is based on information as provided in this subsection. So this is a very messy few pages that to the simplest of issue will be, we're gonna have a new note on all our plats and site plans. The surveyor's gotta drive this train because it's the developer's responsibility to make the notice. But at the same time, we're supposed to get the data to verify that there is a line, but ultimately, there's just gonna be a note on every plat. The challenge we have in Boyle County is we have 5 of these type of lines through our county and eat up a big portion of this county. So I'm gonna guess about every plat survey we do is gonna fall within this requirement. So this was a huge burden for Boyle County. But on the big sense of thing, I guess this is a safety issue, a notice issue, a data transfer issue that somebody in the state thought we needed. And it flew through the legislature, it's now the law, so.
It's interesting because it says interstate gas lines, but then in the subsequent paragraph, it says gas lines, right?
Well, up there in section A, it says interstate hazardous liquid pipeline facility in the same, and then natural gas transmission line. These are the big transmission lines that we
I
have.
think you can classify it as the big
Going
lines.
through the
not
county.
So this is only the big lines.
The big
It's not
lines,
These are the big
36
lines.
inches, 42.
But we've
48.
got 5 of them that go all over our bypass and Baughman Lane and everywhere else. So just to give you an example, if someone wanted to consolidate, let's say 2 lots on Baughman Lane, they would, and let's say they're just looking at those 2 quarter-acre lots, they're gonna have to figure out, are we within 660 feet of a gas line? So someone's gotta know that information. Well, that's why I guess the data's supposed to come to us, so then the surveyors could call us and go, hey, is there a chance there's a line? Or they're just gonna have to survey it, one or the other.
What I didn't understand is just what you're talking about right there, the data that we're getting, the geosynchronous, what it looks like, and how complicated it is going to be to interpret.
Well, if it's
these
GIS data, I can't even look at it.
I
right?
know, that's my point, is that I don't know what it means from their
Well,
perspective.
we're supposed to get it, have it, and then,
And be able to interpret it.
within so many days. What- No, the gas companies don't share that information. No, that's private. Unless someone wants it, they're pays for it. They just don't offer that.
I think you have to buy.
I haven't. I've seen some maps and some surveyors have pulled portions, but to get the whole, all these lines mapped to a geospatial GIS, no,
That's what-
that data is not in anyone's hands other than the
It'd be
gas
like
company.
we'd have to maintain for the county.
And we have to maintain that data, is what this is saying, so that we can verify that, let's say the surveyor doesn't turn this in and says, hey, we're not within 660. If this is sort of falling back on, we're gonna say, no, you are. The bigger issue is we need to make sure this note's on every plat and site plan. That's what our real requirement is. And we'll just make it,
This was coming down the pipe?
I saw it, and I called, me and Henry talked about it, I talked about it with some others, and everyone seemed to think
I didn't think it was gonna make it through, but it went
Yeah.
through pretty easy.
it rolled on through.
Who educates the surveyors on this?
What's that?
Who educates the surveyors? How do the surveyors?
Well, I was hoping to talk to them at some point, but I've talked to a couple of them, they weren't aware this was happening, and they were like, wow, yeah, that's a big deal.
Do they get a mailing from the state?
I don't know how this will get sent out, it becomes the law, and,
Do you know when that date starts?
well, the date in here, one of the dates says no later than August 15th, the operator,
What's the 60 days?
but the
Well, no.
legislation will go in, if it wasn't an emergency clause, it'll be July 15th.
Yeah, that's what I was getting to, it's not.
So it becomes the
emergency.
law July 15th.
They decide, when Mr. Salgado confirmed and all,
So mid-September.
Yeah. So we will try to contact whatever pipelines we know of. Again, there's 5. I don't know what Enbridge versus Kinder Morgan or who's who. But maybe they'll just send us the data because they know about the law. So that would help with number 6. This was new to our state
So
for this
it's
session.
interesting, I mean, that's on the assumption that they're aware that the law is passed.
Yeah.
And the only way they know that is if their lawyers are actually paying attention to what the Kentucky legislature
well,
is
if
doing.
they were paying attention, they would probably kill the damn thing.
Right,
Yeah.
that's what I'm saying, so they're not gonna just send that to us because I don't think they're even gonna be aware of it.
You may be right, but need to see what happens.
So backing up, just in perfect sense, number 3, the developer would need to know there's a line. Within 10 days, notify the gas company. The gas company then, within 45 days, is supposed to tell them, we got your notice, here's the data you're looking for, confirm it. And then that note goes on a plat. What I'm talking about is normally our plats come in and we roll them through in a month. Now there's a 55-day
There's a build-in timeframe now.
build into this that's gonna push plats and development plans back, because if a surveyor turns in a site plan, we really can't approve it until they verify it fell within the 660, they made their notice. If they don't get the notice back, it doesn't hold it up.
Well, be careful. It also says that if you get the responses, you can do it in less time than that.
If you get the response.
That's the maximum time that they're, isn't that, it has
So
to
that puts it
happen.
back on us. If they send us the data, which would be smart, just ship it to P and Z, then all the burden falls on us. That the surveyors will say, hey, I couldn't get the gas company to get me any data, but I know you have it up there. Can you verify that's an Enbridge line on such and such road?
That's an additional significant effort.
And then we gotta put this note on the documents, which is not a problem. We just
The
need
note is the
to,
easy part.
that's the
in a
easy part,
sense,
that's
but
right.
The planning commission, just to get the yes or no, whether it is there, whether it isn't.
And since we're not liable, we may just, simple solution, just put this note on every plat, say this note might apply or might not apply. We're not sure, but,
I'd have to,
I don't
I'd have
know.
to see more of the way it's written.
this was
inside.
this was a small piece of legislation that
Yes.
caught my eye, and I was like, wow. I guess it's good from the big picture standpoint, but from a process standpoint, it's pretty busy, and I think all the P and Zs are gonna learn about it in their fall trainings and all that kind of thing,
Well-
if this is something new.
Definitely, I'd recommend you put it back on the agenda next month as just a follow-up to see what else is happening.
Well, what I'd like to do is get all the surveyors and engineers
Correct.
in kind of a meeting with the staff, and let's just talk about the subreg changes, some small things, and let's just talk about some process things, and make sure they're all aware of it. And again, it's gonna start with the developer or the
Yes.
property owner every time, so. Again, that's just something I wanted to point out to you all. On the agenda, the two House bills, Senate bills related to the solar farms did not make it through the legislative session. We talked about that at length. They ended up, House Bill 392 got close, got through both the House and the Senate. There was a committee substitute. It went to the Rules Committee to be concurred on. It did not finish out, so the legislature did not act on that bill.
So all the discussion of, well, we won't have to worry about it because the state will take care of it, didn't happen.
Well, but the state process is still there. The only thing that was new in this bill was adding the decommissioning process. Everything else in state law is still there.
And what we proposed to on up is still valid.
Yeah, it's still valid. It didn't change anything for us.
I was not an advocate of dealing with decommission on this level. Decommissioning is just an enormous task.
Yeah, that was the only thing different in the state. But the state law verbiage, the 9 pages of law is still the same. So I want to give you an update on that. The next item deals with our meeting time and place, and I'll just let you all take it from here. As you guys know,
Can we tackle that one? And get to this other one? I think we've got a couple people that are.
Okay.
Time.
well, I'll just, real quick, if you wanted to,
I know, can we table it?
okay, it's your call, yeah, sure.
Switch it around, make it later.
Okay.
Please.
And then the last item was just on the comprehensive plan update. I don't have much to report other than the city in their budget meetings have been talking about priorities for the next fiscal year, and there was a brief discussion about a comprehensive plan rewrite with Kentucky League of Cities. They then passed a resolution at not this meeting, 2 meetings, or the meeting prior, 2 weeks prior. The commission did approve a resolution that puts the process in the motion with Kentucky League of Cities, but the way I understood it was not the final contract. And it was discussed with the city commission that the new comp plan project would be with the League of Cities for a specific dollar amount. It may or may not be a joint city-county project. That was not determined when they passed the resolution earlier this month.
The article in the paper would lead one to believe that the county was going to cooperate.
Well, what happened at one of the budget meetings, the city manager outlined the proposal that the league was doing, which is to write a new comprehensive plan for Danville. And the question was, would this be a city-county plan? And it was communicated that the consultant had agreed to do a county addition, but it'd be a little extra money. And this is a real affordable comprehensive plan, by the way. So it could be a Danville-Bull County plan, but it was going to be double the cost of what it costs just to do a city-only plan. At that point, there was discussion about interacting with the county and see if they were interested in participating and/or financially, and I'm not sure that meeting has occurred. So when the city passed the resolution, it was to get the city commission to agree to move forward with a plan with the caveat that still we'd reach out to the county to see if they want to participate. And I guess if they don't, this would just be a Danville city-only plan. And at that point, that's all I know from watching the meetings. I wasn't in the discussions or in the room. I just saw it on the video. One was at the budget meeting, on their Thursday budget meetings. The other was at the city commission meeting 2 weeks ago, is when they passed the resolution to move forward with the KLC proposal. But the city manager indicated that's not the final contract. That's just the proposal. There was a scope of services to be provided for a comp plan, but the contract would be specific to the dollar amount, and then at that point, whether it was a city-county project or just a city-only project. And that's where we're at. So that's all I have, unless you guys have any questions for me.
So we just sit and wait.
I'll see if I can find some more stuff. Again, it was indicated there'd be a final contract coming back to the commission, and I understand there may be a city-county meeting at some point to discuss the county's participation on a joint project with the League of Cities.
But this doesn't address the map issue.
I talked with the city engineer, and I think the proposal that the league's gonna do, they write comprehensive plans. I think they mentioned they've done Hart County, Campbellsville's. They're not a mapping agency or consultant. They write comprehensive plans, and the mapping is subcontracted out, whatever government, either if they have the capability or through a third-party vendor. So the mapping will be separate from the KLC proposal. It'll either happen in-house with the city or another vendor. That wasn't finalized.
But the mapping is our responsibility, I thought.
Well, eventually, you all have to pass everything. So the interesting role is the planning commission will play a role, and you guys have to formally review, have a public hearing on all aspects of any new comprehensive plan amendment or rewrite. The actual physical mapping contractually can happen a lot of different ways. The
But we
city,
have the final say on that.
you guys will have to vote on the entire document.
The city, the company's the plan.
If a new comprehensive plan is written from start to finish, the local governments only approve the goals and objectives. Chapter 1 in our current plan. Chapters 2 through 10 and the maps, all that solely rests with your all's approval authority. So the entire plan has to come through P&Z and be approved. Now, if this is a Danville-only plan, the question would be, how do we kind of mesh the two together? Older county plan, a 17-county plan, and a 2022 city plan. You know, are they in one book, two books, different chapters, whatever? But that's a long ways off. But
And if it is a city-only plan, is it bounded by the city limits? Is it bounded by the service area?
you know, that's a good question. I really don't know. That's where the attorneys would have to figure this out. The goals and objectives would seem to be city. I mean, I've seen other cities do just a city plan. Like Campbellsville just did a comprehensive plan. It's different, Taylor County. And theirs was sort of bound to their city limits. But I guess if you're operating a utility service and you have a larger boundary, then maybe the planning area could.
Doesn't the county have something to say about that? If it exceeds the city limits and starts going out into the service area?
The service area, that's a big question.
I have no idea. Right now, we're under a joint city-county planning commission interlocal agreement. We have a joint comprehensive plan. If a Danville only, it could be just they're amending just the Danville portions of the current plan. I haven't seen the League of Cities proposal, but the league would be working on a Danville portion if the county doesn't participate.
And that would just be city limits?
I don't have all the details or.
The goal and objectives seem to be more of a county-wide thing when you're talking about, you know, farmland and highways and byways and all that stuff is, other than this area right here, most of that's more outside the realms, more in the county, you would think. So I don't know what, they have a separate goals and objectives, that would be very minimalized, I
I think what's probably gonna happen is, it sounds like with the city moving forward with the resolution, at some point, the League of Cities representative will probably come in and, at the final contract, and explain kind of how this process would work. They'd know more about the county's interaction. If the county's not participating, let's say, and it's a Danville-only plan, I guess the scope would change slightly in the final contract. And, but if it's a new comprehensive plan, you'd imagine its goals and objectives through all the required elements under the KRS, including a new future land use map, I would imagine too. I think when we work through it either way, I don't think we've ever had, this process in this county go this route, but it may just be, again, we're just amending the Danville portion of what's currently in the book.
Well, I guess that's,
And maybe the county will participate too.
Doesn't the planning commission usually put that plan together?
No,
It's
no.
always been contracted out?
Well, no, I've done 9 comprehensive plan projects
Well, I
for
think you're asking
this county,
This body,
yeah.
as in us.
Yeah.
I think the answer would be yes.
Well, it's kind of, well, it's two ways, so I'm not sure in this county, because our last 2 conference plans were done in-house.
That's why I'm asking.
That's what he's asking.
Yeah, but if we use the consultant,
So this is the first time we're using a consultant.
there probably was one back in the day, I don't know the history.
Recently, in our history.
It was done in-house. Well, then we contracted out the mapping portion.
Yeah, we're sure we address that.
But it's not unusual for a city to take a lead at this, or a county, because, again, I've been involved in projects where the planning commission might be involved, but we need lots of money to get a consultant hired, so the city is directly involved, because that's where the money comes from, that's where the contract is, the drawdowns. Then the planning commission maybe runs herd on the project with the consultant, but I've also seen it where the city does that independently of the planning commission, because ultimately you all vote on it. So I've seen them done every way. City started, county started, planning commission started, in-house, under contract. They're done all ways.
Realistically, when would the work of the consultant begin?
It was supposed to start April. The resolution, yeah, the resolution put resolution put, if the resolution was
This year is
this month. So the
Nearly
resolution said that they would start right away with the League of Cities on schedules, but they had to get the final contract worked out. That then was going to be contingent on a meeting with the county. So realistically, it's not starting this month, maybe it's next month, maybe it's June. They're going to take those next steps before they actually start the process, is what was, and again, I just watched it on the video, so.
maybe they'll let us know what.
The city manager and I have met and discussed it, and again, the whole issue is they've got to still meet with the county to figure out if the county's going to participate or not. That's the next step. So we'll know more after that.
Okay,
That's everything.
do we have any other announcements?
Appreciate y'all being here.
We got a motion to adjourn,
I'm not gonna.
got a motion, and got a second. All in favor? Let's adjourn.